Making her grand return for last year's Guda Guda rerun is going to be Himiko, and there are a lot of people asking whether or not this servant is worth going for, especially because we have a lot of new players in the mix that came for Anniversary. And especially if you're a new player, you've probably heard that this servant is very strong, but are confused as to whether or not you should probably summon for her, because we have other very powerful reruns that are going to be coming back. You have Melusine's banner making a rerun, Scotty comes back for Christmas, Koyenskaya from the Anniversary returns as a new Koyenskaya comes out, and there are other bait banners that we're probably going to get as well. I wouldn't be surprised if we get some other random Guda Guda banners snuck into this rerun, because Lasengo likes to give us random pop-up banners. And there is a random banner we are at least expecting for Thanksgiving, because we usually get a rerun of a lot of limited servants coming back for that. So with all of that in mind, is Himiko still worth going for? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. But before we begin, if you have not already, make sure you leave a like on the video and you subscribe to the channel for that daily FGO content. Also, if you want to see me play FGO, I do that every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday starting at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But with that being said, let's start getting into her kit, starting off with her hits, of which we do actually kind of need to take some note of, because you can use Himiko in good stall strategies. You can also kind of use her as a solo servant if you want to do that. And I think that makes her look a little bit better, because if you have the 0.57% NP gain on 3-hit arts cards, that's fine enough, but sometimes you might struggle a little bit in actually finding them if you're going to be using her in, say, more of a stall strategy. But if you are using her by herself in more of a solo capacity, this actually does become quite nice, especially when we do get Mighty Chains, especially because on top of all of that, she does have a passive 10% arts buff backing up those arts cards to ensure that she is finding her NP, because as one of these solo/stall units, again, depending on how you want to use her, her NP is very, very strong, and you do want to be firing that NP pretty much as you realistically can. Because aside from the arts card, there's nothing really that's standing out from her kit over here. Because, you know, you've got a strong enough quick card, but until we really get the Mighty Chains, you're probably not going to be firing the quick card all that much. I mean, I like the 5-hit extra attack. That's the gold standard. But aside from all that, realistically, it's just a solid enough kit, right? As one of these weirder servants that does not have a damaging NP but is kind of a DPS herself, a lot of the power is especially stored in the skills with this servant. But there is one thing that I do want to make just really clear here for Himiko. It's one of her passives that when using her for a lot of these more difficult fights, which is what you're going to be bringing her to, she is immune to poison and curse, which is not nothing. There are a lot of bosses that will try to chip away at your HP with this damage over time with some of these, especially when you get more advanced quests as well. A lot of them can be a bit gimmicky, and having a servant that can just ignore all of that is very useful. Now, she can still get affected by, say, burn and that damage over time, but it's still nice that realistically 2 of the 3 main damaging debuffs that the enemy is going to be hitting you with, she's just completely immune to. Like, it's not even a chance, it's just flat out immunity, which is super, super nice. But let's start moving into some of her skills. Starting off with skill 1, this is just a good skill in general, although it does suffer a little bit if you want to use her by herself in a solo capacity, because what you're doing is increasing the entire party's attack by 20% for 3 turns, and you're getting 8 crit stars every single turn per party member that you have for 3 turns. So if she's by herself, that's only 8 crit stars, which realistically is not enough unless you're really backing that up with, say, Mighty Chains, 20, 30, something along those lines to really help her star gen. But if you are bringing her in more of a stall setup with, say, Castoria, your Merlins, your Morgans, people like that, they all kind of get a nice benefit from this, because that means you're going to be dropping 24 stars a turn for 3 turns, and that's essentially half of the 50 stars you need to guarantee all your cards are critting, which is a huge thing. That is not nothing, because Himiko gets a lot of her damage very similarly to, say, Super Orion or Qixi Huang from her crits. So you do want to be doing crits with her whenever you can, especially on those buster cards. And it's why I really like using her in different kind of stall strategies. Even though she can function by herself, you get so much power in basically providing 24 stars every turn for 3 turns, with the cooldown only being 5 turns, meaning the uptime on the skill is really good. You'll have it up for 3 turns and down for 2, which can be very, very nice. Now, moving over to her second skill, this is just kind of like a mix of damage and survivability, which I don't really like when they do stuff like this because it harkens back to the year 1 design of a lot of FGO characters like your Jalters, your Jacks, your Raikos, where you kind of have to choose sometimes between survivability or doing damage. But because if you're going to be using her with people like, say, Castoria, Merlin, people like that, they can usually cover the invincibility she might waste for going for the damaging route, or if you do want to kind of forego going the damage, they can, kind of give you that extra damage. Like, Merlin's third skill plus his first skill, Castoria's charisma, stuff like that. But again, like the first skill, you're just getting very good, easy, nice, generic buffs here. You're getting a nice 30% Buster buff for 3 turns, Invul for 1 turn. The only thing that's not super generic, quote-unquote, is going to be the Demonic Power mod that she has for 50% for 3 turns, which is not bad because there are a few, like a handful of good demonic servants that we have that you can hit with this, but it also lets you hit a decent bit of enemies as well. So if there's random fodder that you're going to be encountering on some CQ map or something along those lines, she can also make use of that. But if you're not encountering demonic enemies, realistically, it's either just going to be the choice of go for extra damage or go for survivability. Make sure you kind of parse it out a little bit, be a bit smart, because that invincibility does only last for 1 turn, and it's on a 6-turn cooldown, so you got to go without it for about 5 turns. So if you are using her in more of these stall strategies, which is all about kind of planning and when you're going to use your skills and stuff along those lines, make sure you're taking that into account. Now, her third skill, as we were kind of talking about with, like, say, Mighty Chains and really making sure we get those crits on the arts card to really get that maximum NP refund and we're firing that NP, this is to help her out with that. Because again, once we get Mighty Chains, solo servants become a lot better and it becomes more generally applicable of who you can bring to these solo content. Just because the Mighty Chains are very, very strong, kind of just buffing all your cards. But if you're going to use her in an actual setup, this kind of helps her out in case you're not finding her arts cards. Because it gives her a 50% battery, which is insanely good. But then on top of that, it's also going to give her really good Buster crit damage for the turn. So you can actually fire this when you know you're going to have the NP available because her NP is also a Buster card, right? So that lets you Buster Brave Chain, get the damage from the NP plus the star weight to those Buster cards to really make sure you're getting those crits, and then backing them up with a 100% Buster crit exclusive damage for the turn, which for reference is the same crit damage that Scotty gives to quick cards or that Merlin just kind of gives for the turn on his third skill, the hero creation. And so you're going to be doing really solid, nasty damage with this. And I guess we'll just lead into the NP over here because I mentioned it. This is going to increase your critical damage by 50 to 100% for 3 turns, which is insane if you start stacking this, especially because she also overcharges the entire party's NP by 2 stages, meaning realistically you could get this up to like 75% if you're throwing Morgans into this setup, which is a little fun and wonky to do. She also gives you overcharge on her NP, so you can get like a 75% crit damage for 3 turns and like a 62.5, and really just eviscerate everybody. Like your Merlins, your Castorias can also just start turning into DPSs because they have so much crit damage. It's really funny. And then they kind of give you an incentive to go for higher NP levels because you get a party-wide Buster buff of 30 to 50% for 3 turns depending on the NP level. Although, don't feel like you gotta wail super hard for this servant. You're gonna do enough damage even at NP1 anyway, because keep in mind, she's already got her own self 30% Buster buff on her second skill, plus any of the other buffs that other supports are gonna be giving her in setups. So bottom line, Mr. ZTL, should I summon for this unit? Well, if you're a newer player, I would advise you from straying away from Himiko, because she's one of those units that gets better the more developed your account is, and the more units that are like kind of good you can put around her to make these strong setups. She can kind of do solo content. She's also a ruler, so she's very tanky, taking pretty much resisted damage from almost all of the classes, right? Although we're starting to get newer and more wonky classes, so we'll see how much that holds up moving towards in the future. But if not for the reason that she can be a little restrictive on newer accounts, there's also just better servants to go for a newer account. Like say someone like Melusine, who doubles as one of the better arts DPS units in the game, as well as being a very easy Buster farmer to use because of her 100% battery. Plus, you have Koyan Light and Dark coming up for New Year's, who are respectively a good farmer and a good support in and of themselves. You also have Scotty coming back around that can really help you use your quick servants, although If you're really that new, I would advise you to just kind of skip out on most people and just go for Koyanskaya and Melusine, and you'll probably be set from there. Then just pick up your free Black Grail during the next anniversary and call it a day. You'll start cooking everything, but she is one of those servants that's very fun to use because the more you use her and the better you get at the game, she kind of feels like she rewards you for being a bit better. It's kind of like Miss Crane in a way where you feel really rewarded for thinking of these like big brain setups or whatever. And you really get to see the fruits of those labors when you kind of figure out how to use the servant, and you really learn about timing your skills and not wasting, your invincibilities or stuff along those lines, and knowing when to fire the other NPs of the other supports. It's really fun to do, but realistically, as a newer player, you're probably just going to be bringing like your waiver that you got, or maybe a lucky Castoria you pulled. Do some big double support setup with, say, your main Arts DPS, your Buster DPS, your Quick DPS, something along those lines, and you're probably just going to do that. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you wanted summon for Himiko, were you able to get her? If you're a newer player, are you going to heed the advice, or are you going to be like, you know what? Nah, I'm going to go summon on this banner. In which case, I do wish you the best of luck. Don't want you to get shafted. I pray that you get her on the first ticket so you can spend the rest of your Saint Courts on hopefully a very busted Thanksgiving banner, but we'll have to see as kind of the month goes on whether or not we're going to be getting an insane Thanksgiving banner or one that's kind of okay. As far as a letter grade is concerned, I'm very confident in giving Himiko a solid A. Maybe if you want to be a little harsh, you can bring her down to B+. I could see arguments arguing that she could be like a B+ because while she is really strong, it's not like a farming unit that you're going to be using all the time that excels in pretty much most content in the game, or not like a busted single target guy that you're going to be using in all this 90+ content like, say, Kentucky Berserker. But I do think she still has a spot, and I'm very comfortable giving her just a solid A ranking because she still has some really good usage in these more challenge style quests, and she'll always be really good for those. And you do want to do those because that's like lords and stuff that you're going to need to upgrade your other servants, so it's not like you shouldn't be doing them. And I do think she'll be kind of nice for some of these very annoying advanced quests that I'm hoping you guys are getting ready for, because I did a couple of them on stream last week and they are really annoying. But I'm very confident in giving her an A ranking. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.